This video is in collaboration with Singapore Association for Mental Health. Hello everyone, I'm Eileen and welcome to our first episode of Time to Talk. Time to Talk is our new conversational program where we discuss with industry experts on mental health struggles that we might go through during our day-to-day lives. We hope that through this series, we are able to ignite a sense of curiosity and awareness to mental health topics and encourage people to be comfortable in talking about their mental health and struggles. We all know the feeling of being nervous, uncomfortable in a social situation, getting butterflies in our tummies before presenting in a meeting, or getting flushed when you enter a room full of strangers, or worry too much on embarrassing yourself in front of people. Some might say it's a normal occurrence for our bodies to experience such sensations. However, how do you identify that these occurrences are interfering with your enjoyment of life? In today's episode, we'll be focusing on social anxiety, what are the signs of it, and how we can build a strong support system. It's our pleasure to have Associate Professor Leslie Lim, a Senior Consultant Psychiatrist from the Department of Psychiatry in Singapore General Hospital and a board member at Singapore Association for Mental Health, here with us to share more on the topic. Hi Professor Lim, would you like to share with us a little bit more about yourself?
Hi Eileen, thanks for inviting me here for this program. I did my training in London many years ago, and I've been back in Singapore for the last 30 over years and been working in the public sector, and now currently I'm with Singapore General Hospital. We see a lot of patients with anxiety conditions, one of which is social anxiety disorder.
Thank you, Professor Lim. Now, to kickstart this episode, can you share with us a little bit more on what is social anxiety disorder?
Social anxiety disorder is characterized by a fear of social or performance situations where embarrassment is likely to occur. For example, a person is afraid to eat in front of people, or to talk or work or answer the phone where he can be scrutinized. He fears that he may be scrutinized by people, and so he avoids such situations.
I see. Then can you also share with us what are some of the symptoms that help us to be classified as, that help someone to be classified as social anxiety, having social anxiety disorder?
So the person tends to avoid social situations like eating and working where he can be seen by other people. He's afraid that his anxiety symptoms may be visible, such as blushing, sweating, trembling, and so he avoids such situations. And or he could endure these situations with a lot of dread and with a lot of fear. He can still go through with it. Sometimes they may even develop a panic attack in these situations. So for example, when they're eating, they're afraid they may drop their food, they may drop their utensils, or when they're talking, they're afraid that they may stammer or say the wrong word and other people may laugh at them.
I see. How long does these symptoms usually last for us to be classified under this category of social anxiety disorder?
According to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders published by the American Psychiatric Association, the 5th edition, one has to have these symptoms for 6 months before the diagnosis can be made.
Oh, I see. So I think that the symptoms that you mentioned earlier are some of the forms of early detection that can help us to understand better on how does someone classify as having social anxiety disorder. How about how do someone actually develop these symptoms?
Well, the broad categories are genetic and environmental causes. For example, in genetics, you have a condition where the person has family members with a similar condition, because if there is a genetic predisposition, then such conditions are found in family members as well. Also, the environmental causes would be like stress. It could be, for example, a person learns to develop a fear of social situations when he observes his family members or significant people in his life having such anxieties and tending to avoid such situations. So they tend to learn that these situations are threatening to them, and by avoiding such situations, they don't learn that they can actually overcome and that such situations are not so threatening after all. The other cause is called conditioning. For example, a person associates a neutral stimulus with something very harmful. For example, he goes to eat in the hawker center and he drops something, and his friend may laugh or burst out into smiles, and he may feel humiliated. As a result, he avoids the situation altogether, and he associates eating with people with something threatening because people are observing him, whether he's dropping his food, dropping his utensils, and or maybe saying the wrong word, and people laughing at them. So they don't want to speak in front of people. And by avoiding such situations, you become more and more fearful. And these situations might in fact spread to other situations. So in social anxiety disorder, you may have the generalized type where there are many situations that they are fearful of, or more specific type like eating, like working or answering the phone.
I do notice that one of my close ones may be over-worrying sometimes, and it does lead them to anxiousness and edginess, where their mood becomes sensitive and tense. It has not gotten to the stage where anything major has happened, but sometimes they avoid social gathering, social settings due to the fear and stress that it's inflicted on them, and only hang out with social circle that they are comfortable with. I have to constantly give reassurance to that person to make them feel comfortable as possible. I care for the person deeply, but I know that action speaks louder than words as well. What can I do to provide encouragement and support for people around me who are experiencing the same?
For a start, you may want to encourage the person to enter into the situations that they are afraid of. So you could suggest going with them, and then later including other people in that social circle, so that they become used to the idea that they can eat and drink in front of others and nothing bad happens to them. And then later on, you can distance yourself away from your loved one and get them to go with their friends, so that they begin to master their anxiety in that way. So it's a gradual increment of the stress level that you subject them to, and it's known as exposure. The more you expose a person to a situation that they are fearful of, the more mastery they can gain over the situation.
I see. So what are some of the treatments available for them?
Well, the most effective treatment is known as cognitive behavior therapy. Cognitive behavior therapy is based on the premise that a person's emotions are related to their thoughts, and thoughts and emotions in turn are related to a person's actions and behavior. So, for example, the therapist may ask the person some questions as to what they think is going to happen to them when they are in that situation, and what is the likelihood that people will laugh at them or think negatively of them. And that's the cognitive part of it. Secondly is to encourage them to enter into the feared situations, as I mentioned earlier, that the therapist may encourage them to go into situations that they avoided, eating or talking and so on, and practice and have some role play with the patient. For example, the therapist may be asking the person to play the role of themselves, and the therapist plays the role of the person, say in a hawker center, and he's dishing out the food, and then the patient may say, I want to order a bowl of noodles, and place an order, and then pay the money, count the change, and so on. That's a very easy part. And then he goes to make it more difficult, and maybe he tells the hawker that he wants to add more cockles, and he has less oil or more chili, that kind of thing, or less soup and that kind of thing, and make greater requests upon the hawker. And that requires more courage. But to reach that level, the person must practice in the intermediate stages until they can master those intermediate stages before going to the more difficult level. That's called role play.
It seems to me that it is vital to provide a lot of encouragement to walk people who are going through this condition or situation out of their comfort zone, to increase exposure and move on to the next stage towards getting better. Like, as you mentioned, ordering chili, ordering extra scallions, yeah. So now we have known some ways to provide encouragement to the people that we care about. Thank you so much, Professor Lim, for sharing your insights with us today on today's topic. Any final thoughts or word that you would like to share with our audience?
Yes, I mentioned about cognitive behavior therapy, and I think it's important for the patient to keep on practicing going into these situations, because practice makes perfect. The person may think that the anxiety level is going to shoot through the ceiling, but it is not going to be so. They can still manage it, and over a period of time, anxiety will get better and better as they practice more and more. So your role is to encourage them to keep on entering into those situations. Exposure is a good way to overcome anxiety, and practice makes perfect. But the other thing I have not mentioned is that the role of medications. If the anxiety is very severe, some medications may help, and these are antidepressant medications which will also help with anxiety symptoms. And these are for very severe cases where cognitive behavior therapy may not completely eradicate the problem. So this will need to be prescribed by psychiatrists and those trained in mental health care.
But I guess most importantly, practice makes perfect, and that is the first big step that we would like to take together. Provide encouragement to your friends and the close ones that is around you who are experiencing the same. Right? Thank you so much, Professor Lim, and thank you for joining us today on today's episode of Time to Talk. I also believe that while providing care for our loved ones, we need to remember not to neglect on self-care. Stay tuned for more upcoming episodes where we discuss with experts on mental health topics. Goodbye.
Bye.
If you know someone who may need help, you may contact the following helplines.